Nick Vince here. This week's guest on the Chattering Hour has racked up an impressive list of genre titles, but he's going to be best remembered for his portrayal as Victor Pascow in one of the best Stephen King adaptations, Pet Sematary. This 1989 horror classic, directed by the great Mary Lambert, was an instant hit. And in his over 45-year career, Greenquist has racked up credits on stage, screen, TV, and as a director. Up next on the Chattering Hour, Brad Greenquist. And we're back with our special guest, Brad Greenquist. Apart from his role in Pet Sematary, Annabelle Creation, Lost Souls, and The Cursed are other genre titles. And he's also appeared in Call of the Wild, Water for Elephants, Lone Ranger, and Alley. Brad, thank you very much indeed for joining me today.
Thank you for having me, Nick. Thank you so much.
That's my pleasure. Right, so I'd like to start by taking you right back to the very beginning. Do you come
from... That was a long time ago. I don't know if my memory goes back that far.
Well, we'll see. These things are always a little bit of a challenge as far as I'm concerned. Do you come from an acting family?
Not at all. Not at all. My father was a military man. He was in the U.S. Army for like 26 years. My mother was a housekeeper. I grew up in Virginia for the most part, but all of their people came from Minnesota, and their parents, they were all farmers during the Depression. You can imagine how well that worked out. At least there was always food, and I come from a long line of peasants, basically. And nobody did anything as kooky as the arts in my family, my extended family. Nobody did anything like that.
Right. So what kind of kicked off your interest then?
Well, that's great. Here's what happened. I can pinpoint it actually. The household I grew up in was very quiet and orderly and routine, which is great for children, quite frankly. There was no chaos. There was no everything was nice, even keel. Yeah. And one night when I was a kid, a friend of my father's from the Army came over for dinner, right? And he was this big, rotund man with this big handlebar mustache, right? Oh, an eccentric guy just walked in. And after dinner, they were all playing cards, and I was just sitting nearby because this guy had this big laugh, and he told these stories, and he started going off on how much he enjoyed going to see these horror movies at the movie theater, and how much he enjoyed that as a kid, seeing Frankenstein and Dracula and being so scared. And I was like, oh, that's what I want. I want to break out of this even keel thing, and I want my blood to pump. And so suddenly I was like an insane fan of, all of those Universal Gothic horror films that they showed on Saturday afternoons and Friday nights,
Right.
And that changed my life. That the visit from that guy changed everything for me. Now look, I brought a picture. So what I would do is here in Virginia, outside of Washington, D.C., on Friday nights, there was this horror show that was on. They'd show a movie like Frankenstein or Dracula or Werewolf of London, any of those. And it had a host. His name was Sir Graves Ghastly, and his actual name was Lawson Deming. And he worked out of Detroit, and we got his show in Washington, D.C. So one day he came. Now look at this. So that's me when I was 10 years old. Can you see that?
I can.
Yes, and that is Sir Graves Ghastly. And that, like, I every Friday night I would watch his show. He was very campy, very, very campy. You can catch pieces of his intros on YouTube. But that was it, man. That was it. I was like, so that's what I wanted to be in horror movies. I wanted to make horror movies. You know, I was obsessed. And then that was in late 60s, early 70s. Then in 72, I suddenly switched when Charlie Chaplin came over to get his honorary Oscar. I saw the Gold Rush on TV and I was like, boom, okay, silent comedies, that's the thing. Not a huge market for that for the future. So I like grew up with these two opposing things, you know, Boris Karloff and Charlie Chaplin. So that's kind of what got the ball rolling.
Right. Yeah, you kind of remind me, because I think we were in the lucky position over here when, as I was growing up, Saturday morning, we never had the horror movie stuff. That came much later, in my teens. But in the Saturday mornings, we used to have Charlie Chaplin and Laurel and Hardy was screened on Saturday mornings for kids. And, you know, this was before we had cartoons. And so, you know, that's what we got to see. Like, now, I understand you kind of, right, so I'm going to try and take this in order. So back in the 1970s, you were doing street mime in Georgetown, is that right?
Yeah, that was a little bit later. You know, I was so enamored of all those silent comedians, you know, Chaplin and Buster Keaton and Harold Lloyd and Mabel Normand and all of the Max Sennett stuff. And I would, like, on school nights, I would, we had a television in the basement of our house, and I would go to bed at my appointed time, and then I would get up at 1 in the morning and turn on TV and watch some late movie that was showing until 3 in the morning, and then go back to bed. And my mother couldn't figure out why I always looked so tired. So that led to, then what happened was, I went to see Marcel Marceau perform the mime. And I got the best seat I could get, which was in the top balcony in the last row, you know. And he was like this big. But I saw him at the Kennedy Center in Washington, D.C. So it was a big theater. And for 2 hours, one man with no words, no props, no cast, held 3,000 people in the palm of his hand. And I walked out just shaking, and I thought, maybe that's something I could do, because I didn't know how to do anything. I was like supremely incompetent at everything, right? And I thought, so I started training in mime. That was my first performance training. And then I found somebody who became a friend, and we did this, and he was more experienced than I was. And so in 1977, we went to Georgetown in Washington, D.C. and did this street mime in kind of a courtyard, and we passed the hat, and people loved us. I was shocked. I was absolutely shocked. People loved us, and I saved $1. We split up the hat, and I just took $1 from there, and I said, this will be important. It's my first dollar, my first professional, that first time I've made money performing. I'm going to keep it. And I put it in a book and forgot all about it. And years later, when my kids were small, one of them pulled this book off the bookshelf, a Marcel Marceau book. It opened up, and there was that dollar bill. And I knew exactly, oh my God, I saved it. So that's that story.
Wow. That's brilliant.
Kooky, right?
Yeah. Oh no, I love that idea. I remember when I first got a check, you know, I'm trying to remember I should really hold on to my first ever pay slip for a proper real acting job when I got my union card and so on.
Did you do it? Did you save it? No.
Just rubbish at that kind of thing. I mean, I hoard stuff ridiculously, but I managed to lose that entirely.
Yeah, you know, when I found that dollar, when it flipped out of that book, I took it and I I brought it to an art place and had it framed. It's in a frame and it's on my wall now.
Right.
You know, because looking at it then, every so often I look at it and it just tells me, keep going, keep going. Because you know how it is when you're older. It's like, oh, do I still want to audition? Do I want to do this job where I need the money, but I'm really not interested, you know? And it looks at me and it says, keep going. It's like that 17-year-old kid saying, come on, man.
That's really beautiful. I like that idea, because I think we all need, as professionals, particularly at the moment, I think, you know, everybody's just like, what the hell am I going to do to actually put food on the table at the moment? And it's just like trying to return to what it is you actually want to do. It's extraordinary.
Yes, our whole identity has been taken away from us. You know? That entertainment thing, that's what we do. And without a crowd or camera, or, you know, that's who we are. So who are we in a pandemic? I don't know.
Yes. Yeah.
I'm asking you, Nick. I'm asking you. Please give me an answer.
If I think of one by the end of the show, I'll let you know. but I think being reminded of the dollar as to why you started out is really, you know, why did I start out? What was this urge to communicate that we all have? We have as human beings, but I think as actors and performers particularly, we just have this, and artists of any kind, we have this urge to communicate, and it's just that beast that has to be fed so often.
That's a nice way of putting it. The way I see it is more like that night was like my first shot of whiskey, and I'm an alcoholic, and I cannot. I mean, you know, every time, you know, do you want to do a play? I say, no, I'm not going to do any more plays. They're too time consuming, never get anything out of them. Do you want to do a play? Yes, please. It's like an alcoholic who hasn't had a drink in 3 hours, you know?
Suddenly I've got this image in my mind of Actors Anonymous. We need this support group just to keep the faith. Anyway, coming back to your career. Funny enough, you talked about doing mime and being interested in Charlie Chaplin and so on, but you did go on to make a black and white silent comedy called Run for Your Love.
Run for Your Love. Yes. I made this. I just gathered my friends after I was after I graduated from high school, probably the summer that I graduated. And we, you know, drive 30 minutes out to this park on the Potomac River, and we shot this 30-minute black and white chase comedy. It's a chase comedy, you know, slapstick and intentionally made silent with title cards and everything, you know, like a Buster Keaton sort of film with a lot of stunts that I did myself, hanging off of cliffs where you can see the river beneath me, and running here and there and making these big leaps and all of that. And then, you know, spent a good amount of time editing it together and putting music together for it. And then I entered it into a Super 8 film festival. Film festivals were not huge in the 70s. There were some, but it wasn't what it is today. And we won first place. We won, you know, best film in competition and the best acting award as well. So I won as a producer and as an actor, but not as a director, I guess.
Hey, that's still awards. I think, you know, still.
And, you know, looking back on it, it's like, oh yeah, it's fun. Parts of it are kind of like amazing, and parts of it are like, kind of silly. But I've had it all digitized, and I'm going to you know, put a new soundtrack with it and kind of you know, put it all together again, you know, one of these days when I have some time.
Oh, that sounds really fun.
Kind of fun. Yes, kind of fun and kind of like cringeworthy too, because I'd be like, that was some terrible acting, man.
Yeah, looking back at yourself from that kind of distance, don't judge yourself too harshly. Don't judge yourself too harshly.
But it was great to, you know, to win a film festival. I mean, you know, there were, I don't know, 30 or 40 films in competition. So we beat all of them, you know, that's
Yeah.
not bad.
Well, really well done. But you then went on to do Mutants in Paradise. Was that your first paid film gig?
That, right, that was kind of a student film.
Right.
Kind of. It was, well, it was a bunch of students from the University of Virginia in Charlottesville, Virginia, that were making it, and they, I don't know how. I guess I auditioned when I was in Richmond. That was the year I finished getting my BFA degree from
Right.
Virginia Commonwealth University, which was in Richmond. And I guess I auditioned for it, and they cast me in the lead. And it's kind of a slapstick sci-fi comedy, student comedy, very much,
Right.
you know, that college student sort of feel to it, you know. And that was fun. It was fun to do. Spent a summer shooting that. Um, and then it took, that was in, must have been 83 that we shot
Right.
it, and it took several years for it to eventually come out on video, you
Yeah.
know.
As
Um,
yeah.
but you know, it's a good, you know, you look back on it and it's like, okay, good training ground, you know.
Right. Right.
Right.
But you then went. I mean, I think your first, if I got this right, your first real proper horror film was The Chair in 1988. Is that right?
Yes, I shot that in 86. First I shot a movie called The Bedroom Window, which is a
Right.
thriller directed by Curtis Hanson, and it was before anybody knew who he was.
Right.
And that really put me on the map. Got a bunch more work, even though nobody knew who I was. And one of them was this movie, The Chair, directed by this crazy Polish director, Waldemir Korzeniowski.
Right.
He was like kooky, but I found that most Polish directors are kooky. I worked with Janusz Kaminski too as a director. I've worked with him on three projects, and one of them was Lost Souls, which he directed, which was also a horror movie. And he was just as kooky as the guy who directed The Chair.
Right.
You know, he's Spielberg's DP.
Yes.
Um, so, but anyway, The Chair, yeah,
Yeah.
that was wacky. That was it was a good cast. Everybody was very nice, but we were shooting the whole thing in an abandoned prison in Newark, New Jersey, and it was very cold and damp. That's what I remember most.
Right.
It was kind
Yes.
of uncomfortable,
Yeah.
but doing the scenes, it was good. It was like, you know, it was kooky, just
Right.
very kooky. Yeah.
Right. And then I think probably within a year or so of that, then you did Pet Cemetery. Is that right?
Yeah, following year, or no, 2 years later, in '88, we shot Pet Sematary. Um, and the funny thing about Pet Sematary, first of all, it's amazing that Pet Sematary like has this other life now. You know,
Mm.
I mean, it's like a zombie. It's come back from the dead. Not that it ever was dead and buried, but you know, it's more popular now than I think it was when it was released, you
Oh,
know?
interesting.
Yeah. So yeah, that story, the I had this amazing agent back then in New York, and he was just so aggressive and in a nice, funny kind of way, you know? He would just charm people into seeing people. So when that was being cast, they didn't want to see me at first. They didn't want to see me. And they wanted to see another client of my agent's. And my agent said, well, okay, I'll tell you what, if you want to see this other client, you also have to see Brad. Yeah. And
Wow.
you know, he called me with this, said, okay, it's a film of Pet Cemetery, because the novel was huge, of course, you know, everybody was talking about it. Novel, film of Pet Cemetery, and I was like, oh, horror movie. And he said, Brad, this is big. Don't pull out on this. This is big. Just go. Right. And I found out later that he had gone to all these lengths to get me seen, you know.
Sure, to get you
And I went
seen.
in, but the thing was, just before that, I was auditioning for Brian De Palma, one of his films, right? And I had to run from that to this Pet Sematary thing. And then after that, I was a reader for Mike Nichols. He was casting Biloxi Blues or something like that. And so, okay, I got this horror movie, I just squeeze it in between. Didn't really prepare much. I read the script, but like, you know, there's not like a scene for actors. It's like, oh, okay, I don't know what to do with this. So I just went in and I just kind of like riffed. I just riffed. And the assistant casting director was putting me on tape and she was like, oh, that was great. And I was like, really? And then I guess when Mary Lambert, the director, saw, she had seen me in the bedroom window and she was like, oh my God, we got to have that guy. We got to have him. We got to have him. And so I went in for a callback, but it was just to meet with her and talk with her. And we just got along so well. And then I didn't hear anything for like 2 weeks, you know, and I checked with my agent and I said, what's happening with the Pet Sematary thing? Because by now I really wanted it, you know, because I'd gone in and gotten all this positive reinforcement, you know. I mean, you and I, we could audition for a children's show that we have no interest in doing, but if somebody says, hey, you're good, you suddenly really want it, you know. Right?
Yeah. I get that. I get that.
So then, you know, nothing. I didn't hear anything. I asked my agent. He said, "Oh yeah, they want you. We're negotiating." Okay, so another week went by, and he closed the deal. He like they made this offer, and he said, "Nope, we're not going to take that." And I was like, "Are you crazy? Are you crazy? I need this. I'm broke. I need to work." And he said, "Yeah, but we can get you more money." Okay, so he closed the deal on a Friday night around 9 o'clock while he was playing poker. He had a Friday night poker game and he never missed his poker game, and he negotiated the deal while he was playing that game, which like he tripled my rate and you know, and got me this and that and this and that. I mean, it was like brilliant because he was playing poker.
And this is why actors need managers and agents, folks. It's because we're just rubbish. It's like, you like me, you're going to give me some money. Okay, I'll do it. I'll do it.
Or even if, you know, no, you have to pay. You have to pay, and you're going to tour to elementary schools and entertain 3-year-olds. But you're good, and you go like, I'm good. Yes, you're great. Oh, okay, I'll do it. What does it cost me?
Oh yeah. I just like visions of Mike was doing school. Yeah. So know that situation. Yeah. What you talked about, you said the Pet Sematary was huge at the time. Had you read the book already, or were you a fan
No,
of Stephen King's?
at the time I was into the 19th century Russian novelists, you know. And I was like, you know, I was like this 20-year-old guy who had his nose up in the air because he was reading these really big, thick books, you know. And as a matter of fact, when I was doing Pet Sematary, I was reading The Brothers Karamazov, which is not a small book, you know. So many of my hours in that makeup chair was like reading The Brothers Karamazov, you know. It was like 800 pages. And I did not get through it.
Right.
Then, I mean, I finished it after the movie, but I didn't finish it during those makeup hours.
Wow. I mean, of course, you mentioned Mary Lambert, you know,
Yes.
one of the few female directors working at the time. What was
Yeah.
that experience like?
Oh, well, we just hit it off, you know. It was really, really nice. She would, you know, she didn't have to direct me too much. She'd tell me, "Oh, just tone it down a little, tone it down," because I was, you know, I was kind of, you know, the role Victor Pascow at the time was, it was kind of the all of those Stephen King films at that time had this campy thing to them, right? They were really scary and horrific and all of that, but there was also this camp in them that you don't get in horror movies now. That's been excised. And Victor Pascow, that character, was like, that was the bit of levity and bit of campiness in the film, you know? And so that's, I was trying to, you know, do this balancing act of being campy and yet also deadly serious, you know? It was a tricky one. It was a tricky one. I don't know. I think if I were to play the role today, I would do a better job at balancing those two things. You know what I mean? So anyway, sometimes she would tell me to, oh, just knock it down a little bit, do a little bit less, you know. And this was a good thing to learn, you know, early in one's career, when to play it up and when to do less. Mostly do less, you know. But there wasn't a whole lot of direction she gave me. She was just like, yes, hang from that tree and say your line. Yeah, that's, can you hang there for another 2 hours or so while we set up the shot? I had always hoped that that we could work together again sometime, but that hasn't happened. But I've seen her, you know, on odd occasions, because Denise Crosby, she's still very much in contact with Mary, and so there have been certain functions that we've been at together, and it's always great to see her. It's always terrific, you know.
Yeah, because I mean, you had an extraordinary cast. I mean, you had Denise, who you've just mentioned. There's Dale Midkiff, and of course Fred Gwynn.
Yeah.
What was it like?
You know, Fred was I don't know, like 10 years ago, there was the first restoration of Pet Sematary. And somebody was doing this little you know, behind the scenes sort of thing, right? It was the first of those. I don't even know when it was, 10 or 15 years ago. Anyway, I thought, oh, I better watch the movie again, because I hadn't seen it since its opening, right? And so I watched it again, and having that distance, I was like, oh, okay. Fred is like, he holds that movie together. He's the spine. His character is the spine of that movie. And if you watch carefully, man, he is so good. You know, in the beginning where, you know, the little girl asks, where does that path lead? They've just moved in, and she says, where does that path go? This path going out into the woods. And there's this shot of Fred, and the camera slowly creeps in on him, and he says, oh, there's a story there. Yeah. Better save that for another time. And just that, like 2 or 3 little lines, you just go, you know, your spine tingles. And it's the perfect setup. And he delivers it so quietly and so well.
Yeah.
It's just amazing. So he, you know, all of these people, I mean, I kind of was a solo act, quite frankly, when we were shooting. You know, I had this or that shot with Denise, this or that shot with Dale, but mostly I was like isolated. I was separated, you know. Okay, Brad, we're going to get your shots now, and then we'll shoot everybody else and stuff like that. And then, you know, on the set, when we had lunch, you know, I'm sure you know this, you can't really sit at the lunch table with everybody. Because, you know, I had these brains hanging out on one side of my head, and everybody on that side of me would just get it. The first time it happened, we were having spaghetti, and I just sat down, and one by one and one guy said, I'm sorry, Brad, I don't mean to be rude, but I can't eat my spaghetti and look at your brain.
I mean, you're lucky because you were allowed to eat whilst you're in makeup. The ones that I wore, either it's physically impossible, or where I was able to open my mouth, they wouldn't let me say, no, you'll get grease. It'll destroy all the edges of the makeup. No, you can't. You're not allowed to eat. We'll give you water through a straw. Yeah.
Oh, that's hard because you're in it for a long, long time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I would end up having my lunches in my trailer because I didn't want to disturb everybody. So, but when I wasn't in makeup, Denise and I got along great. We got along great. And we still do. We live relatively close to each other. We still see each other. We went to see the new Pet Sematary together, as a matter of fact, the two of us. That's a story I'll tell you in a little while. But Dale and I, we were friendly with each other, but we didn't really hit it off so much. He was very kind of, protective of himself, and I couldn't get through to him. But now he lives in Pennsylvania now, but we're great friends. When we do these conventions, I mean, having everybody together, it's just so much fun. We really have a great time together, even though, we weren't on the set all together that much, we know each other better now than we did then.
Yeah.
And Miko Hughes, who played the little boy, he's, he does these conventions, and Andrew Kubacek, who played Zelda, the deformed sister, he sometimes comes to these conventions, and when we're all together, it's great. It is so much fun. We hang out with each other after all the signings, after 10 hours of being with each other all day. Then we go out for dinner and have a great time. It's wonderful. It's really, really wonderful.
Yes, I remember being with Denise once at one of the conventions. We were just walking along the corridor, and it must have been at the beginning of one of the conventions. And she just said, "It's Miko, Nick. I'm so sorry, but I have to go and talk to Miko." Because, I completely understand that. Yeah, because that kid was less than 3 years old. He was absolutely amazing. Now, I know, Stephen King was on set occasionally. Did you get to meet Stephen King?
Yes, for a brief second, briefer than his appearance in the movie.
Like me and David Cronenberg. I get,
yeah. I was in my makeup and I was going to my trailer, and he came like hustling up to me, and I said, "Oh, Mr. King." He said, "Hi, Steve. I'm Steve. Hey, that makeup looks great. Looks great. That's just how I imagined Pascow. Oh, that's great. It's good to see you. Good to meet you." And then he was off. It was like that fast, and he was like this enthusiastic little kid, who was just, it was his day of shooting, I think, in the when he was the minister,
Right, yeah.
It was that day, because part of that day was shooting him, the early part of that day was shooting him and that scene, and then the later part of the day it was me and Dale in the cemetery, where Dale goes, "I can't do this, blah blah blah," and I tell him to stop, and he doesn't listen.
I think one of the things, looking at your career, you've done a lot of TV, you've done a lot of film, you've done a lot of theatre. Do you have okay, out of those three, do you have a favorite, film, TV, or theatre?
That's like, beer, wine, or whiskey. No, I'll take all of them. I'll take all of them, all at the same time. No, I enjoy all three. They all three have their benefits, as you know, and they all three have their downsides. Film is probably I can't even say it's my favorite, but it's so hard to book a movie these days. I think, honestly, I think the movie century is gone. I think it's, we're lurching towards something that's between television and movies. I don't know if movie theaters will survive this pandemic, for example. I don't know. But movies and the slower pace of movies, only shooting 2 or 3 pages a day is great, because you can get really, really good shots. I think it can be tedious, but it's enjoyable because you can really get something good. And you tend to work with very experienced actors and stars who are always just wonderful people to work with. And there's something about the prestige that's nice. Oh, we're working on a big movie, or even working on a low budget movie with a shoestring crew, which is often just the best, I think, where everybody's helping with everything, that's what I like about movies. Television, you work a lot more because there's more television, and the roles are not as good as film. I think they're not as, they're written in a different style, and it's very fast. A DP friend of mine who's done films and TV, he said, yeah, TV is the land of good enough. You just get your shots for the day. It's good enough. It's good enough. And film isn't like that. But television offers, you know, the opportunity to work a lot more, you know, and to sometimes work with really good material, and sometimes material that was, oh, it was rewritten at 3 a.m. this morning, and our challenge is to make it a little bit better, you know, to make the scene come to life, even though some poor writer had to do a rewrite, you know, in the middle of the night, and they're hoping that we can make it work, you know. Those challenges are nice. And it's fast. There's some enjoyment to that too. And then theater, you get like amazing material generally, that's way deeper than either film or television. And you get a live audience, which I find doing theater like indispensable. I do at least one live show a year. Not now, not during the pandemic, but that's generally what I did, like 1 or 2 live shows a year, because I think there's nothing better than getting in front of a live audience and having to perform right then and there. You can't go, oh, let's cut and try again. You know, you have to keep going, and you feed off of their energy, and you learn so much being in front of a live audience. So, you know, I like all of them. Of course, you know, then, you know, theater doesn't pay anything in Los Angeles. Television pays okay, the residuals are good, and movies pay okay. You know, none of it pays the way it used to. But so anyway, that's my assessment. I'm sure you understand all of that, right? I'm sure
I
that
do.
resonates with you entirely. Yeah.
Well, no, I mean, I think it's very interesting. Hopefully it's interesting for our viewers and listeners as well, because I think getting that broad perspective, those 3 different ways of looking at the business and helping people understand exactly what it's like to be a performer. Because one thing I did want to ask you about was the fact that you, for Shakespeare's 400th birthday, you produced a very successful 3-week Shakespeare festival in Los Angeles,
Yeah,
which comprised of, I'm told, 64 scenes from his many works with 32 actors and 16 directors.
yes.
How did that come about?
There were 8 of us producers, 8 of
Right.
us. I mean, me and my son were the lead. We put the scripts together, and it was our project. But we got all these other producers on board because it was such a huge undertaking, you know. Yeah, that actually, the year before that, I guess in 2015, I was in your stomping ground. I was in London
Okay.
with my son, who was 16 years old at the time, and we did a Shakespeare course at the Royal Academy.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. He was the youngest in the program that summer, and I was the oldest.
Oh,
But, you know, it
excellent.
was like, oh, this is great, because you know, a lot of what was taught there is quite different from what is taught in the States as far as Shakespeare goes, and how to deal with the language and all of that. So it was like a real eye-opener, and it's something I had wanted to do for my entire life, was go to England and train in Shakespeare, right? So we did that, and we came back, and we were so inspired. We were like, let's do this, you know, we'll put up this thing. And so we had 3 completely different shows. Each one ran for 1 weekend only, like Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And then the next week, brand new show. The next week, brand new show, brand new cast, brand new material, right? It was like insane. We had fights, we had live music on stage, but it was, you know, it was like very much, it was like, okay, it was like, if you were in it, I'd be like, okay, Nick, we lost an actor, so we can't do this one scene. Can you take, you know, that sonnet, you know, could you like do a jazz riff on it with the musicians? You got 10 minutes to figure it out, and then we got to open the doors. So could you do that? And you would go, sure. And you go, I mean, we did that with this actress, and she just knocked it out of the ballpark, man. And it was like that. Or, you know, oh, Nick, somebody's sick. Can you what speeches do you know? Do you know Richard III's opening speech? Now is the winter. Okay, you know that. Okay, do that. And what we did was we had in the theater, the walls in the house where the audience was sitting, we just wrote the whole menu of scenes on the walls with chalk, right? So that not only for the audience, so that they could look up and go, without having to look into their program, they could go, oh, okay, we're doing a scene from Hamlet now, but also for the cast, so that we knew what was next.
I like that sort of thing.
But it was great because, you know, we kept the lights up in the house the whole time, so the audience could see each other, we could see the audience, you know, kind of like how Shakespeare did
The
it
globe, yeah, yeah.
in sunlight. And we were constantly interacting with the audience, you know, taking those speeches right to the audience and really talking to them and going into the audience, up the aisles and crawling over chairs, bringing people down on stage to help out. It was great. And the audiences loved it. They just loved it. It was a 99-seat house. And the first show, we had 60 people, and that was our smallest house. By the second week, we were filling the house every night because word got around. And everybody would see one show and they go, okay, I'm buying tickets for the next 2 weekends because this was great. So that's what we did. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Congratulations. That sounds extraordinary. That sounds.
We're going to do it again. We're going to do another one. I think after this pandemic, it would be a great thing to, you know, just a celebration of life, celebration of Shakespeare, you know. So that's our plan, to do another one.
Yes. I'm suddenly remembered of the. Yes, I suddenly remembered the film of Shakespeare in Love.
Yes.
Where the players have just come back because they've had to leave London because of the plague. So they've all gone out on tour. And the only reason they're returning is because the theatres are opening again because the plague has subsided. So what goes around comes around. And that sounds like the perfect way to celebrate that. Now, I know one of the other things, when we were talking earlier on, you mentioned it, you teach as well. You've been teaching for many years. How, when did all that start and come about?
Well, I started actually, when I was, after I'd gone to college, I went to New York. I was in New York, and you know how you like try out all these different classes until you find a teacher that really resonates with you. So where I landed was with the actor Michael Moriarty. Do you remember Michael Moriarty?
No, don't think I do.
He was in he made his name really doing the miniseries The Holocaust back in the 70s.
Right.
And he was in a couple of horror movies, Q, the Serpent from Outer Space or something like that, and Troll, and some of those things. And he did a number of movies, a lot of plays, and he won an Emmy and a Tony, and he taught in his living room in New York. And it was one of the most extraordinary classes I'd ever been in. It was all breath-based. It was like, oh my God, he has these people, they've never acted before, and in 3 classes, you're completely absorbed in what they're doing. You know, it's honest, it's truthful, it's like, holy cow. So I trained with him for like 10 years, and near the end of that whole thing, he would, you know, he had gotten Law and Order. He was on the first 2 years of Law and Order, and he said, well, I can't be there, can you teach tonight? Okay, sure. So I would teach for him. And then, you know, then he shut the whole thing down because he was doing Law and Order. And for a few years I didn't teach, but then I started teaching. I guess it was after 9/11, when there was no work, you know, here anyway, there was just nothing. So I started, a friend of mine was teaching at a little film school. So I started teaching there, and I was like very quickly the most popular teacher there. And I would teach other places, you know, here and there. I went to Idaho, went to Virginia, went to other places, places here in LA. And then finally, I just opened my own little deal. And eventually, then I got my own studio, which I have in Santa Monica right now. This little ramshackle building that was built in the 20s, and is, you know, if you blow too hard, it's going to fall over. But it's it's really nice. And I teach on-camera acting, how to, you know, how to deal with the camera, the mics, but also, I mean, you're going to understand this, that different sensibility that the camera has from a stage audience, you know, that seduction, and like understanding what you as an actor do best, and always doing that, rather than, you know, these theater actors trying to be everything and do everything. I can do that. Nobody cares if you can do it. What are you? What are you? And how can you make a career out of that? Because, you know, I made a career out of playing bad guys, really, except for Victor Pascow in Pet Sematary. Mostly I was playing rapists and murderers and, you know, all these horrible people until lately. So how do you have what you've already got, what you are as a person? What do you have to offer this industry? And then how do you make it translate onto the camera? That's what I do. So my classes have been very popular. A lot of my students are now professional actors. You know, they're working lots, like more than me, which is a little disconcerting.
That's the
But it's
teacher
great.
thing.
It's a great thing because, you know, have you ever taught? Have you ever taught acting?
Oh gosh, only decades and decades and decades. When I left drama school, I taught we kids, teenagers, young
Yeah.
teenagers.
Yeah.
You know,
The great thing about teaching is the one that learns the most is the teacher. You
I
know?
was wanted to ask you, you know, what are some of the, can you think of a valuable lesson you learned from your students?
Yes. Something that I did not realize, or I kind of realized but never could pinpoint. Effort. No effort. Never push. Never put any effort into your performance on camera. Never push for the tear, never push for the laugh, because the camera, you know, the camera can overlook a lot of awful things. Sometimes the camera can overlook really bad acting. I know from personal experience.
True.
But then other things it like really amplifies, and I think the thing it amplifies the most is effort. Trying too hard. Reaching to the camera, you know. It's very unforgiving with effort. And so you know, I think it's a matter of getting the storm going inside and trusting that the camera will come to you, and you seduce the camera in. And you can't, you know, when you're out on a date, it doesn't work to put effort into a date if you're trying to, you know, if you really like fall for somebody and you want them to fall for you. If you're trying too hard, it's such a turnoff. And it's the same thing, you know, but it's hard. It's still hard to not try hard, you know, to not act because we want to act. We're actors. That's probably the biggest thing I've learned from teaching.
Right.
And I
Wow.
have to relearn it all the time. I have to constantly, you know, I like, because now we do self-tapes for auditions, and I look at it and go, man, stop trying so hard. You've been doing this a long time. You don't need to try, man. Just sit there, say the lines. Don't worry about anything else. You know what I mean?
I completely know what you mean. Honestly, when I have to do the introductions or the weekly, when I'm doing the adverts for the show and so on, I keep on having to go, dial it back. Just say the lines, Nick. You don't have to do that all the time. Just say the lines, just be yourself, which is, of course, I think is what we're saying is the most terrifying thing in the world, as you say, because on stage, they're a long way away from you. They're usually around about 10 feet away from you at least. And if you're standing on stage, most of the time you can't see them because you've got lights in your eyes and you're actually really just acting to this black void, unless you're
Yeah.
doing something, as you say, where the lights are up. But camera is, it can see the pores in your skin, you
Yeah.
know, and it
Yeah.
completely innocent. You know,
It's hard. It's still hard.
yeah,
Still
yeah, yeah.
hard. Like you say, it's trust, it's faith, it's having faith in the camera and in yourself, you know, that you're fine. But I also think that, you know, Meisner said this, and John Gielgud said this as well, that it takes 20 years to become an actor. 20 years. And when I was, you know, younger, I thought, what is that? That's just, you know, that's kooky. No, you can work. But I noticed that at 20 years, around 20 years of having performed, something dropped in me. Something inside gave up, actually. It was more like, I don't know how to do this. This is, you know, this career, this craft. I don't know what I'm doing. I've been working at this so long and I don't know. And I give up. And then this magic happens. You know, you stop trying
Right.
and you go, oh, that was good. That's what I've been trying to do all these years. What did I do? I did nothing. I just listened and right. So that's, you know, still the constant challenge, but it's the biggest thing I've learned from teaching is stop trying. You're enough. Just let it be. And, you know, understand what you're doing, but just understanding it is enough. You don't have to do like you have to on stage. You have to do on stage.
Yeah. You can,
You know?
yes. Yeah. Literally, you can do nothing and it will just come to you.
Yeah. And if you do that on stage, you will put the audience to sleep.
Yes.
Because they'll be like, what the hell is this?
Yeah. Yes. This is extraordinary. We're almost out of time.
Oh my God, I've been talking too much. I'm sorry.
No, not in the slightest. No,
The pandemic. I haven't talked to anybody in almost a year. So sorry, Nick, that you're the recipient.
I'm very grateful. Trust me. What I'd like to end with is by the luggage in the crypt. So
Oh yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So the idea is that basically, you know, you're making a decision for your last great adventure, as Peter Pan had it. What film would you take with you?
Yeah. I think there's like, you know, there's probably about 10 films I would like to take, but if I had to choose one, I do think it would be Charlie Chaplin's The Gold Rush. I think so. He's so funny. If you can get over the myth of Chaplin, just seeing him and that cast, that amazing cast he has, doing these silly things, I always laugh. I always laugh. So I think if it's my last choice, I want something that makes me laugh. And I think it would be, I mean, I've seen The Gold Rush probably in my lifetime, probably 20, 25 times. It's still great. It's still great.
You're saying The Gold Rush, and if I've remembered this correctly, this includes the sequence where he gets the forks and the dinner rolls.
Yeah.
And he starts making them.
Yes, which he actually lifted from Fatty Arbuckle. There's a film of Fatty Arbuckle doing that like 15 years earlier with the dancing rolls, you know. But Chaplin does it so well, and eating his shoe and his cabin being like on the precipice of falling into a canyon. It's just great. It's just great.
Right. What about a book?
A book would probably be, oh, there's so many great books. It would probably be Dostoevsky's The Brothers Karamazov. I think so. It's an amazing, amazing book because he asks why. He's always asking why, you know, why. I actually adapted part of that novel into a one-person show. And it was the whole section around the Grand Inquisitor. you know, where one of the brothers is talking to another brother, and then he says, oh, I wrote the story about the Grand Inquisitor, which is the, you know, the Inquisitor coming, Christ coming back to earth, and the Inquisitor arrests him and says, we're not on your side, we're with the other guy. It's the only way to control people. I did this as a one-person show, 12,000 words, 2 hours.
Oh,
And one night I actually went up on my lines. I had no idea where I was, in Act 1 or Act 2 or where.
I did a one-man show last year. That was only an hour, and I was just telling my story. So I had a fair, you know, I could always improvise, no, you know, plug in another story. But yeah, oh wow,
Yeah,
man.
So I would take that, and that would give me plenty of reading till the end of my days, because it's like 800 pages.
Yeah. What about an album?
Oh yes, yeah, an album. I was thinking about this. I was like going through, okay, is it Beatles? Is it Rolling Stones? Is it Ella Fitzgerald? Is it Louis Armstrong? Is it, you know, I went through all, and you know what I landed on, quite frankly, is Hilary Hahn, violinist, playing Bach's Concerto for 2 violins in D minor. The most beautiful music ever written, and she plays it with such vivacity and such, it's just great. That's what I would take.
Okay, I'll check that one out. It's not one I'm familiar with, so
Oh man, I saw her perform it live. Oh, I thought I was gonna die. It was so great. So it's just so, you know, I don't know how to say it. I should know how to say it, but it's great.
It's music. It's very difficult to communicate music.
Yeah.
In words without actually just going out and listening to it. I will go out and listen to that. What about a food or drink, a beverage of some sort?
Yeah, I think that would have to be a bottle of wine, a very big bottle of red wine, very, maybe a vat of red wine.
One of those huge, great wooden barrels.
We understand each other. Yes.
Yeah. Just so you can lie on the floor and open the tap. Yeah. Got that. A piece of visual art.
Yeah. You know, that would be. I think that would be Van Gogh's painting of the field with the crows.
I know the one. Yeah.
Coming up out of it. When I first moved to New York, my first job I was fired from. My second job, it was at a movie theater. That's a whole other story. For part 2 of this, right? My second job was working at the Metropolitan Museum of Art in the dungeon, where we would get all the books and the posters and things and bring them up to the bookstores and all of that. And during that year that I did that, there was a Van Gogh exhibit. And so I got to wander around in the museum, Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York, when nobody was there. And I could get close to these paintings. And those Van Gogh paintings, I remember one time I came around the corner, and I think it was this painting of the crows, and I looked at it and I was like, poof! The energy, just like, it was like a supernatural experience. It just went, whoa! And I was stunned, and tears came to my eyes, and I could not move.
Wow.
Eventually I did move, otherwise I wouldn't be here. But it was such a, I've never been struck by a canvas in that way before. And part of it, I think, was because the museum was empty. There was nobody there. No, you know, there were workers there, but it was either before hours or after hours. So there were no visitors, you know, and I was there alone, and it just, yes. Anyway, that's the one. I would take that.
Right.
Or a print of it, maybe. If I'm on my last days, I don't want them to entrust me with the original.
Yeah, we'll leave that. A most amazing replica. You know, it'll be a pigment perfect replication of that piece of art.
I'm going to hold you to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And finally, what about a luxury?
A luxury. Well,
Yes.
I think that would have to be a nice glass to put the wine in. You know, one that just really feels good in the hand, right?
Yes. Yeah. So
Yeah,
there,
and one where you feel like, oh, this is going to be much better if I drain it. Oh yeah, the glass is much better now that I've drained it. Oh look, it's full again. Oh, okay, drain it again.
you suddenly reminded me of the bishop's wife and the glass of sherry that constantly refills itself. Yes, yes, absolutely. Um, Brad, this has been so much fun. Thank you so very much
Yes,
indeed.
yes, it's my pleasure. I hope we can meet in person someday. We have
Yes,
to make that a thing, okay?
yes,
As soon as it's safe. I'll get
yes.
to London. I would love to come to London and just see plays, you know, and see theater and Nick. That will be the name of the trip. To see
Okay,
theater and Nick. Um,
that is a day. That is a promise. I love going to theatre with my American friends when we come over. That's a great excuse to
okay, yeah,
do the
great.
Globe or do the what someone
Shakespeare's Globe. Oh my God, it's those are some of the best shows I've ever seen.
yeah,
Holy cow!
yeah,
Oh man! But the theater, you know, the theater in London, in your city, is just all of it is
yeah,
just knockout,
yeah,
man. It's great.
yeah.
So, okay, when the
All right. Yes,
pandemic's over, I'm gonna
yeah.
knock on your door. I'll give you a
Okay.
little warning, like 5 minutes.
Okay.
Nick, I'm outside. Where are you?
All right then, sir. Thank you very much indeed. And between now and then, please stay safe and well.
Yes, you too, Nick.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye. Bye. Thank you again to Brad Greenquist. What a gentleman. And next week on the Chattering Hour, I'm joined by Daniel Roebuck, who appeared in The Fugitive, US Marshals, Final Destination, quite a few Rob Zombie movies, and on TV in Nash Bridges, Matlock, and many, many more. Join me for an extended edition with lots of amazing stories. And in the meantime, stay safe and well.